Thank you for coming this afternoon and welcome to the Screenability panel. I have here 4 filmmakers from the program and I will be introducing each one of them. I will be giving a small intro of who they are, what they've done and why they're here. And then I will have a provocative question. Now, we have Geraldine, who is Manu's French interpreter. How would you like it? Would you like me to stop and translate for you, Manu, every little bit?
Yep. I think okay. A bit at a time.
Yes. Yeah. Or you can just translate over the top of me, I don't mind. All right, we have Manuel von Stürler. He is writer-director of Lust for Sight, which is a documentary documenting his exploration of what it is like to see, his own experiences of. His previous film, Winter Nomad, screened here at Sydney Film Festival in 2015 and has also screened at the Berlinale, several other European film festivals, winning Best European Film Award in 2012. So he is premiering Lust for Sight here at Sydney Film Festival, and prior to being a director, he was a musician, composer for many years, with his primary instrument being the trombone. Am I correct? Yep, okay, good. Then we have Johanna Garvin, who wrote and directed the Milky Pop Kid, which is a short film screening with My Name is Emily. And that was made through the Information and Cultural Exchange and was Johanna's first short film, so she's an emerging filmmaker, having been trained with Metro Screen and on-the-job training. And she currently works at Create New South Wales, so she had her finger on the pulse of all filmmaking in New South Wales currently. And the Milky Pop Kid is a short film about who stars Emily Dash, who's a well-known theatre maker, herself identifies as having a disability. And it's about a wannabe fading actor who thinks he will win all kinds of awards if he plays a disabled character. So he engages Emily for a consultation in how do I become more disabled for the role. So it's a kind of funny satire on actors wanting to be famous for being disabled when they're not. This is Daniel Monks, co-writer, producer, editor of Pulse, which is a feature film that screened last night and will be screening this afternoon at the Dendy Newtown. All of this program is at the Dendy Newtown. He's made several short films. 3 of his previous short films, Wild Imagining, Charlotte, and Dear Life, screened at the Palm Springs International Film Festival. And he's also an actor in many plays and films. And Pulse is the debut feature for himself and for the director Stevie Cruz Martin, a WA-based director. So, and Pulse is a kind of science fiction body swap drama about an angsty young gay teenager having body issues and existential dilemmas. Very sexed up and great film. It's all wonderful film. Aurora Fearnley we have from the UK. She had her film Struck, which is a short film screening with Lust for Sight, and it deals with the aftermath of a violent incident that happened to a jogger on an abandoned beach, deserted beach. And it's all filmed in one shot, and from start to finish, and it's the exploration of the psychological fallout of that violent incident. Aurora has made several short films, Murmur, Shades of Living, and Daniel, all premiering at the Edinburgh International Film Festival. She was awarded Breakthrough Filmmaker at the United Kingdom Film Commission. And the directed United Kingdom commissioned her short. In short, she's an up-and-coming star of the United Kingdom scene. And she's currently developing a science fiction feature, Tipping Point, with the British Film Institute Vision Award recipient Jude Goldrake. And she's participated in the Reykjavik Talent Lab 2016, Filmonomics 2015. Okay, I'll just stop reciting the list. Okay. Okay, these are our fantastic filmmakers, all in some way, shape or form identify as having a disability. And I am Sofya Gollan. I will be taking us through a conversation, and I will be starting out with a provocative question, I think, for the filmmakers. As a creator with disability, one of the things I struggle with is the credibility and the value of my perspective on the world, where my experience is coloured with the fact that disability is part of our identity, among all the other identities that we assume. But to the outside world, or to people who see us from the outside, they assume that disability is the only identity that we have. So I came across a statement made by British artist Yinka Shonobare, who is the Turner Prize nominee. And what he said changed my perspective on disability art and cinema. And in very profound ways, and you may know the quote, disability art can be seen as the last remaining avant-garde movement. Much like feminism, LGBTQ and Indigenous movement once were. Now, avant-garde is an overused term, but the simple and original meaning is the advance guard of people or works that are experimental, radical, unorthodox with respect to culture, art, and society. So I believe that artists with disability are occupying that space, living and depicting their lives with experiences. So when you make a film or an artwork by a person who has lived experience of disability, they are presenting you with a work that nobody knows about or has experienced or understands. So I would like to ask you, do you think that applies to your work?
Yeah, I mean, your comment about the fact that when you have a disability, especially like quite a visible disability, that people can see that as your only real identifier, I definitely find that to be the case. And I know for myself, like a lot of my work explores disability and sexuality and that intersection, because I find that so often disabled bodies and disabled people aren't seen in sexualized terms, and figuratively and also literally, historically, disabled people have been literally desexed, and I find it quite interesting to explore that. But I feel like as well, I mean, my first introduction to the disabled arts community was actually through Accessible Arts, through their Catalyst dance program. And I remember before that point, I'd only ever been involved in the disabled community through medical contexts, and not very enjoyable medical contexts. And so entering the disabled community through that way, and especially through the form of dance, and there was such a breadth of variety of different disabilities, it really not only changed the way I saw the community, but also changed the way I saw my own disability. And I really felt that instead of my movement and my body and my physical expression being a lesser version of the standard ideal, what I loved about integrated dance was it really celebrated each person's own physical expression. And for me personally, it was so moving and incredible to see these different disabled performers dancing, because I mean, I know in my body's covered in scars, and each scar has a story, and my body holds, you know, body trauma, and each experience or injury or anything I have is stored in my body, and so when I move, that's inherently there. And so I felt like my movement was kind of telling the story of my life. And and seeing all these different disabled performers moving and seeing their stories, and this was just through dance, was incredibly moving and eye-opening to me, and something that I never saw. And especially growing up and being gay and disabled, I would go to queer cinema to feel less alone, but I never saw depictions that I could identify with disability, especially young disabled people. And I think that's so much of a reason why I feel like it's really important, Screenability and us as disabled filmmakers tell our stories, because they're not being told, and we're so awfully underrepresented, but hopefully that will change. It's a very long answer.
I'd just go ahead and say yes, definitely this is the avant-garde. When I see the films in Screenability and the new work that's coming out at the moment, Jennifer Bray's got a film called Unrest about ME, which has just won an award for virtual reality. And I think this goes to show that there is another way of thinking when it comes from disability, or you come from having a different point of view, where your view on the world isn't shared. Your perspectives, your experiences, you're wanting to put that out there because people can instantly relate to it, and yet it's different. And therefore, it's a different way of using the camera, using the medium. And there's a whole heap of really interesting stories going to come out, different characters coming out, but viewpoints, ways of telling the story. And I think that's something that everyone is missing. I think it's a very exciting time that we're getting behind, not just diversity, but we're separating disability out and saying, this is a rich, diverse, on its own. Let's explore this, let's support this, because here are stories people are going to connect to. And I personally was more moved emotionally by the stories in the Screenability program, not just because I was seeing people that I could relate to and say, I understand that, but because they were the true humanitarian things in our life that we all understand, growing up and being a young teenager and wanting to explore sexuality. And you don't have to be in the same body as the person to understand everything they're going through. It's completely relatable, and yet it's a different point of view. So I think it's brilliant. I think it's very exciting.
Pour moi, c'est particulier parce que mon handicap ne se voit pas.
So we can't see his handicap.
Mais par contre, c'est quelque chose qui est une détermination depuis toujours de proposer des récits et de faire un travail dans la direction de respecter et plutôt presque aduler la différence de l'autre, avec handicap ou sans handicap.
Yeah, so for Manuel, it's been a question of creating stories to put into light the other person's story.
Et c'est vraiment proposer des perspectives de réflexion pour écouter l'autre dans tout ce qu'il est, la différence culturelle, la différence de l'handicap ou pas. Le problème de l'handicap, c'est que très souvent, je crois, le plus difficile, c'est le regard des autres sur l'handicap qu'on a. L'handicap lui-même, on apprend à le vivre, mais le plus difficile, c'est justement le regard de l'autre. Alors, c'est vraiment pour moi une énergie de dire, attention, c'est vraiment, restons ouverts aux autres.
So he's proposing different ways of looking at the other one. And for him, the most difficult is the perception that other people would have of someone with a handicap.
Et dans ce film, Lust for Sight, il y a une partie autobiographique, mais je propose vraiment un récit d'une réflexion à travers qu'est-ce que c'est que voir, et finalement de démontrer vraiment que nous sommes tous, que tout le monde a une vision différente. Donc l'handicap, où est-ce qu'il se situe? On ne sait pas. C'est vraiment, la vision est individuelle, donc c'est vraiment à partir de mon récit autobiographique de dire et de proposer à chacun de réfléchir sur sa manière de voir le monde, et qu'on est seul avec nos propres perceptions du monde.
So it is really an autobiography, but the big question is, how do we see the world? How do we choose to see the world? That is the main question and quest in his work.
I think for me, the biggest thing with seeing disability seminar in an avant-garde way is, well, I know for me, with the Milky Pop Kid, I really wanted to challenge able-bodied perceptions of what it's like to live with a disability, because I know, and I'm sure everyone else on the panel could relate to this, I'm constantly challenging people's perceptions on a daily basis, and I think that's also really important in this sort of storytelling, because I think we, as filmmakers, have like a permission to really challenge the sorts of low expectations people may have, because I think there's a real fear that people have, when able-bodied people tell stories of the lived experience of disability, I don't think in many ways they're courageous enough in wanting to challenge certain perceptions, and I think being a filmmaker living with a disability, it gives you that permission and that real determination to challenge those sorts of perceptions, because it allows you to think about them and go, well, I really want to challenge this.
I think a large part of being a filmmaker is just being able to tell your story. And for me, the notion of being a sexual person or a person interested in turtle, say, or all of those that kind of make up separate identity, but for me seem to be very normal. But you've made a film about a young gay disabled man who's totally obsessed with sex. And for some, that is a really surprising thing, that anyone with a disability would be anyone wanting to do that at all. Yeah, do you want to talk about, because it's very provocative.
Totally.
Yep.
I mean, it's even that thing, like, talking about the representation of disabled people, like, when I was a teenager, I didn't know any other disabled people, especially any with my disability, and I honestly thought, I honestly didn't know if myself and my body with my disability could be arousing to people in a sexual way. And I honestly didn't know if I could have sex, if I would have sex, and my disability also affects my sexual organs and stuff. And so like it was such a unknown to me, and also such a thing that I felt like I could never have or be a part of. And so when I became older and was able to, you know, explore that side of myself and express myself sexually, it was such like a, you know, this thing that I thought I'd never have, and kind of kid in the candy shop type thing. And so, but yeah, I think it's really important also to show disabled people as sexual beings, not just to challenge the abled community's perception, but also to give examples to disabled people, and, you know, to say that it's okay if you're, you know, if you have erectile dysfunction, you can still have amazing sex, because growing up, I did not think that would ever be the case. And so, yeah, it's, I think it's really important to tell these stories, and they're stories that haven't been told, especially from people with disability and their lived experiences, which is, I feel like, the most valuable and important people who should be telling it.
You spoke earlier about hidden disability. I've noticed that a lot of your films don't have disability content or overtly so. So I'm just wondering, and you came out as a filmmaker with disability maybe a short while ago, a year ago. Would you like to talk about that?
I think for me, when I started doing some writing and really exploring what I wanted to say, and I kept having script supervisors really push me to look at what was the core themes beneath work. And I'd gone to a screening of 3 or 4 of my short films, and the guy talking about me said, here's somebody who's really interested in exploring perceptions on reality. And I thought about that, and I thought, well, why is that? And I realized it's because from a very young age, I was completely bedridden for 4 or 5 years, from 14, I don't know, to nearly 20, when I first got sick. And I kind of thought, well, I got better, and I'm living quite a healthy life, and let's just keep on with that. And this fear of being that ill again was always in the back of my mind like a shadow. So it's a bit like the fear of confronting that and saying, this is, you know, that's part of who I am as much as being perceived as healthy. So it started to seep into my work. One of the first films I did was Life on the Line, which was about a young boy who wakes up after a 4-year coma trying to reconnect with life. I mean, it's on the nose now. And he has to work, and he works at nights, and everyone that works with him has a disability of some kind or has a mental illness. And it's about this collective of people who are afraid to work in the day, and they become a community that work together. Now, I can look back 7 years and see what I was saying, but at the time, I had no idea that I was exploring that needed to come out. And so more recently, what I realized was that I don't see people like me on the screen. I don't connect to the stories that I see in the same way, because they're not the struggles that I have, and they're not the joys I have either in the same way. And it's also, I don't see people like me having the career that I want. And that scared me the most, because there are fears for women having children in this industry and how hard that is. But to be a disabled female director, when there are only like 14% of women working as directors in the UK anyway, well, why would I do that to myself? When I have the choice to be perceived as strong and healthy, when I have the choice to choose when I work freelance and therefore always represent my best self and not be perceived as sick or weak. And I think there was a great word you used when we were talking about disability and screenability, which is the shame that comes with disability. And in order to take shame away, you have to speak its name. And that means confronting it and saying, I'm not ashamed. And therefore that means I have to accept that part of myself. And actually, it's a beautiful, unique lens in which I can show the world what I see and how I've experienced. And hopefully, there'll be a 20-year-old filmmaker thinking, well, there's somebody who has a career with a disability that I can relate to. And there's somebody that you've put on screen that had the teenage experiences I did, and also spent their entire 20s very much cerebrally locked into doubt about how ill I was and how well I was and how much I was allowing people to see. And therefore, most of my work is quite about perceptions of reality, because I'm not sure if what I see is real. Very much like my news film. You're not sure if what you see is what everyone else is seeing, and then you live in a very much a state of an insecurity. And I think that once you start to explore what that is, I think you start to relate to a lot of people with or without disability.
I also think your short film shows your, because you're partially sighted, are you? Yes, no.
No, not sighted. No, it's, I have an autoimmune condition, and it's, yeah, I have like 3 or 4 different genetic conditions.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But I think it also affects the way you frame the film, the way you see. I mean, I think that is actually, it comes out in a, it's slightly off kilter in a way that draws you into the story, that is appropriate to the story. So the content of the story also fits the way you actually frame and make.
I think you're right. I mean, there was a question that I was asked at the screening, and you were saying about how the film has been shot. And I think because I'm so new to being comfortable in that position of what the disability is, how it's perceived, and how therefore my work is changing, or how I'm reflecting back on how the work I've been making, I'm not even really aware of it yet. I'm not even entirely emotionally comfortable being in the kind of the sphere yet of being disabled. It's a relief, because finally I get to say, I try really, really, really hard to make myself appear as able as everyone around. But actually, there's the fragility and the strength comes from being vulnerable. All of the best stories are about vulnerability. And actually, it's going to really be better for me as a storyteller to embrace the vulnerability and to express that, I think.
Manu?
À travers ce film, j'ai exactement le même sentiment. Mon grand problème, c'est que mon handicap ne se voit pas. Il y a peu de gens qui, dans la rue, qui me croisent et qui voient évidemment que je ne vois pas. Parce que j'arrive à me déplacer, mais ils ne voient pas que je ne peux pas lire et reconnaître les gens dans la rue.
So his biggest handicap is that his handicap is not being able to be seen, because he acts just like anyone, any normal person. He can go about the street like a normal person.
Typiquement, dans un festival, je rencontre un réalisateur, je parle avec, c'est très sympa. Et 1 heure plus tard, je le recroise dans la rue, mais moi je ne le reconnais pas. Et lui, il se dit, ah, il fait la gueule, Manu. C'est ce genre de situation.
So he might meet a filmmaker on the street whom he's met an hour earlier and had a chat to, but on the street the filmmaker, Manu might not recognize him, whereas the filmmaker would, and the filmmaker might think, oh, he's mad, he's angry at me.
J'ai toujours trouvé des stratégies pour me débrouiller, pour aller au-delà de l'handicap. L'handicap n'est pas un problème, je développe des stratégies et j'y arrive.
Yeah, so he's always managed to overcome his handicap. It's made him more resilient. He's always find ways to overcome that.
Mais les stratégies, elles demandent beaucoup d'énergie. Tout le temps, il faut trouver des tactiques, des astuces pour arriver à aller au-delà de l'handicap.
So he always has to think of tips, ways, manners to overcome that handicap, which might require a lot of energy from his part.
Alors pour moi, dans ce film, de pouvoir dire à tout le monde, hey, j'ai un gros problème, je vois très très mal, mais vraiment très mal. C'était une manière de soulager et de pouvoir avoir une meilleure compréhension de la part des autres.
So to be able to say, hey, look, I have this real big problem I can't see is a real relief, and hopefully can obtain comprehension from other people, from the audience.
Et ça marche parce que depuis, le film commence le parcours des festivals, et j'ai déjà des retours même d'amis, enfin pas des amis proches, mais des connaissances qui m'ont dit waouh, je savais pas, et ça a resserré la communication.
And over time, he's had very positive feedback from friends who didn't know about his situation, and Manuel is saying that he's really brought them closer together.
Le problème, c'est que tout le monde ne va pas aller voir le film, alors je me demande maintenant si je ne dois pas mettre un petit panneau ici avec écrit « Je suis presque très malvoyant ».
So the issue is that not everybody is going to watch the movie, so he's wondering about maybe possibly putting a sign on himself saying, look, I don't see very well at all.
Mais juste pour finir, je suis vraiment... Je retrouve ce sentiment de... Ça fait vraiment du bien de pouvoir libérer les émotions difficiles ou plus joyeuses, ce que c'est que de vivre avec un gros problème.
So he's really grateful to be able to share his feelings today on how it is to live with handicaps, whether it is joy or sadness.
I have a theory that disability is big business in cinema. Because, like you said earlier, it is about vulnerability, it is about the extremes of the human condition. It's also about aspiration to achieve, to overcome, and they always have that best drama. Actors are always winning awards for playing disabled characters, but I wondered if the disability story were more authentic, if it were people with disability telling the story, would the business be as big, or because in some ways the disability cinema narrative at the moment is very Hollywood, very aspirational, to be normal, and that sells really, really well. Especially when they know that the actor is going to get up out of the chair and walk down the red carpet at the premiere, or the blind person will see, and all of those things. But I have a theory that if we were able to tell the stories ourselves, the business would be as big. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I just think if you look at, say, like maybe not Rio, but the London Paralympics and how popular that was, you saw how athletes with disabilities were seen more in a level playing field. So I see no reason why it can't apply to the disability cinema. And I think that people, like I just think about the experience that I've had making the Milky Pop Kid, and I just think about if you had more creatives having control over a disability narrative, then it wouldn't only be a great opportunity, say, for an actor living with a disability to play a role, but also it would have a flow-on effect with cast and crew and other cast and crew and writers. So I don't see why people wouldn't see this as a great opportunity for more awards.
I actually wrote the end of my degree on this exact topic, weirdly, which was, let's say, 10 years ago. I think one of the problems I noticed looking at disabled people in the cinema is a lot of overcoming disability, rather than people being disabled and then going on a journey that's nothing to do with their disability, it's part of who they are. And I think that's another factor in terms of what's going to change. Pulse is a fantastic example, please see this film. And I also think that there is, for the audience, because there's no creatives at the top of the chain making decisions with disability, therefore they're not able to understand that when an able-bodied actor gets up and walks away, that then there's no fear for the audience, that they're not in that position, that someone is not in a, let's say, a hard place. Whereas if you have people who understand that this is not something to be afraid of, and this is something to be embraced, and is actually part of the greater world, that this is that we can have these narratives, and that they're going to be more effective and more emotional and more enriching when they're told authentically. But you need people at the top of the chain making decisions of money. You need people at the top of the system who have disabilities in there in the same way that you do with women getting more opportunity, or any change in the system. It needs to be top down. It needs to be those people all through all of the industry.
I wonder how much do you, for myself, I always have to manage how much can I ask for in order to do my job, or how much should I compensate. So of course at the end of the day I'm exhausted because I've compensated in order to people work with me easily. So how do you find that affects your job? I think Manu touched it on a little, how you manage, you have a compensation strategy. And you have compensate, how much do you, how do you think it affects your work?
C'est-à-dire que depuis toujours, mon travail se met, enfin, mon handicap est complètement intégré au travail, ou vice-versa. C'est-à-dire que je vais pas, quand j'étais musicien par exemple, je prenais pas des jobs, des prestations pour un week-end, parce que je devais apprendre toutes les partitions par cœur. Donc je prenais des jobs qui étaient sur 3 mois, des créations par exemple pour le théâtre. Et parce que mon handicap ne me permettait pas de prendre des jobs juste pour un week-end qui me demandaient beaucoup.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you would just only, in Manuel's case, for instance, when he worked as a musician, only would commit to certain work commitments that would last maybe no longer than 3 months, because his handicap is integrated into his work, into what he does.
Et donc le processus de faire un film documentaire pour le cinéma, c'est un processus pour tous les réalisateurs qui demande en général 3-4 ans. On travaille en équipe et cette forme-là convient parfaitement à mon problème visuel parce que j'ai besoin de temps, j'ai besoin d'une équipe et donc c'est peut-être plutôt mon handicap qui m'a dit, qui m'a fait orienter d'aller sur cette forme-là de travail plus que l'inverse.
So his work, when he has an objective, would take around 3 to 4 years, and it's probably he works with a team, but it's quite a slow process. He's saying, and he's chosen that because it's his handicap really which has led him to work on this format.
So you build a team. So you build a team who know you and know how you work. So you have a shorthand already.
Donc tu as une équipe qui te connaît déjà au préalable.
Oui, enfin chaque projet, j'ai en général un assistant un régisseur pour le tournage. L'écriture, je travaille aussi avec quelqu'un. Mais disons que c'est la même structure que pour une personne qui n'a pas de handicap. Il faut bien comprendre que on m'a proposé de faire des documentaires pour la télévision. C'est en général en 6 mois. J'ai dit non, pas parce que ça ne m'intéressait pas, parce que je sais que ça va être trop lourd et trop compliqué pour moi. Et donc c'est raisonnable. Je fais un choix raisonnable en fonction de l'handicap que j'ai.
So he chooses the same structure over and over again in terms of the team, for instance, and he chooses the slower pathway. If he were to be offered to make a documentary in 6 months' time, he feels that he might be a bit rushed and it would not work as well because through his handicap he chooses the 3 to 4 year term plan. Yes.
Mais je crois que c'est aussi depuis tout petit, je me suis dit, je ne vais pas faire des choses, je ne vais pas aller dans des directions qui sont trop compliquées pour moi. Il faut intégrer cet handicap avec les choix que j'ai envie de faire et avec ambition. Ça n'enlève rien à l'ambition. C'est juste qu'il faut être malin, il faut être intelligent et ne pas aller se mettre dans des choses qui sont trop compliquées pour moi.
He chooses to remain realistic in terms of his objective and not to go with too complex of situations.
Mais voilà, il se trouve que faire un film documentaire de cinéma, c'est ambitieux. C'est un travail sur 4 années, ça coûte beaucoup d'argent et finalement je me retrouve au même statut que n'importe quel autre réalisateur. Et l'ambition, elle est la même. C'est simplement que cette forme-là convient bien à mon handicap.
Yeah, so the ambition remains the same as a film director, but he chooses to go along the 3 to 4 year plan because it suits his personal situation.
La seule différence réelle, c'est le travail avec le cinématographeur, avec la personne qui filme. Parce que je ne peux pas maîtriser totalement. Donc je dois avoir une grande confiance et on parle beaucoup avant le tournage. On regarde les images après, mais pendant le tournage, quand on shoot, ça me demande une grande confiance et un travail très ensemble, parce qu'elle prend en charge une partie de mes choix, en fait, de ce que je pourrais maîtriser.
Oui. So there has to be a big trust between Manuel and the cameraman. They talk a lot before the session, and they would look at the filming in depth afterwards, because it's part of this trustworthiness is part of of the project. It's very important to Manuel.
Some of you may have seen the film in the Screenability program already. This is your opportunity to ask questions or to comment on what we've spoken in the last 40 minutes. Are there any questions from audience? Yes?
My name's Christina and I work in diversity and inclusion, and I've been struggling lately with people coming from a privileged position and mining diversity stories, whether it's about disability or low socioeconomic status or cultural background, sexual preference, to create drama without actually coming from that background themselves. And I've been getting quite dark and miserable about seeing that. But more recently I've been thinking maybe that's the bridge that you need to get something moving. So 20, 30 years ago we had white people making films about Aboriginal people, and now we wouldn't think about doing that anymore. And maybe this is a similar sign that in a decade or two we'll be celebrating really authentic stories, which I think are the avant-garde, really exciting. It's an opinion rather than a question, I guess. I just wanted to see whether you felt a similar sense of optimism that we're at the beginning of a new age in authentic storytelling where others can't tell stories that they don't know.
I mean, yeah, I personally am definitely optimistic. Even the fact that we're here right now on this panel as part of this program, Sydney Film Festival. I mean, like all of us, like we've been doing this for a while without the support and without this platform or recognition, and so, I mean, and that's the thing as well is I'm kind of, I mean, there's obviously always an ideal way of these stories being told, but I'm also of the mindset that these stories need to be told, and you know, and yeah, and hopefully with the more privileged people mining the minority stories, hopefully they'll include the minorities in the storytelling process and have them be part of it, because I think that's where the real sustainable change is going to be. But I mean, even in this past year, especially since Screen Australia's study on diversity in Australian TV drama, I really felt like that caused a huge shift, at least from my perception, as being a disabled person in the industry, and I really hope it continues. And I hope it's not, I hope, which I am optimistic that it will bring about a real integration into the industry and not just a hot topic for now, and yeah. Actually, I wanted to say, I just thought as well, when you were talking about the different compensating in terms of for the disability, I did actually have a thought that I know as myself as a disabled person, it's very easy to feel burdensome, and when you're creating a project and asking so many people to work on a story which is essentially your story, it is just magnifies your feeling of like, thank you, sorry type thing, and but I know for myself, I mean, as a person with a disability, and feeling burdensome, I can tend to, especially in a professional context, try to overcompensate and really prove my ability and prove how able I am, and often push myself too far and not take care of myself in that way. And I think what is really important for us as disabled filmmakers is to feel comfortable enough to not have to prove ourselves, and to also to ask for the support and not view as having the support meaning that we are any less capable. And yeah, that's been a personal journey for myself, working as a person with a disability, that I thought I would share.
I think that the ongoing challenge reconciling how the business is set up and how people move through the ranks of filmmaking, how they move up through the hierarchy to the position that they want to be in as a filmmaker, and by the actual barriers of how people with disability actually do that. But there are other ways, there are other paths to finding the level in the industry that you want to be. Often people, and this is true for everybody, when they think I want a film career, they think I'm going to be a director. And it's not until they actually make a film that they realise they're better suited to editing or acting or being the sound person. And it's only by doing that you find the right position for where you are. And that's often not available to people with disability to find that path because they can't actually access the opportunity to get there. But I think, like you say, it's about having a platform and for people recognising that our stories not only have a cultural value but a business value. And then we get given worth alongside other diverse stories.
I mean, even the fact that like the majority of these screenability sessions have sold out is just kind of testament that there is an audience here for this type of storytelling, and the storytelling hasn't been told, and people want to see new stories. Like, our industry is so homogenized now with so much sequels and remakes, and like I've seen all of the screenability films and you won't see any films like this before, and yeah, it's really exciting.
Je pense aussi que c'est quelque chose qui fait beaucoup de bien à beaucoup de personnes. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, il y a une norme, tout le monde doit être comme ça, au boulot, dans la vie de tous les jours, dans la rue. Il faut être bien dans la norme. Et je crois que c'est un poids pour tout le monde. Justement, cette espèce de pression sociale de toujours être très bien. Et de montrer en fait l'handicap ou la différence qui est un peu extraordinaire, on n'est pas ordinaire, je pense que ça peut faire du bien à l'homme ordinaire qui lui est sous pression aussi pour être tellement parfait.
So Manuel is sharing that in fact it might relieve the audience to see such movies that these guys are doing, because there's such pressure now to fit in a mold in our society, that this might provide, the movies might provide with an avenue for some relief to the ordinary man.
Et moi j'ai été surpris d'entendre depuis un mois et demi, maintenant que le film est montré, beaucoup de gens qui me disent « Ah, mais tu sais, moi aussi j'ai tel problème ou tel autre problème, ou etc. » Mais personne ne le dit. Ils sont un peu comme moi, on cache, parce qu'on veut être dans la boîte, on veut être bien. Et alors, sortir cette parole, le dire, je pense que c'est plus que la reconnaissance de l'handicap. Pour moi, c'est un petit peu enlever les barrières de cette boîte ordinaire, de cette pression sociale. Pour tout le monde, de se libérer un peu de toute cette pression sociale.
So being able to access such documentaries and movies as Manuel found out, has actually liberated quite a few people he's spoken with. He's found out that they too had things they wanted to share, and through being able to attend these movies, they've liberated themselves from a certain social pressure that we may have.
We have time for one more question, and then perhaps. Yes.
Hi, I'm Claire. First I want to say thank you very much for bringing diversity to story making. I certainly have seen, Sydney Film Festival obviously brings the best of the world cinema to Sydney, but generally what's available on television, dramas, etc., I find excruciatingly narrow. So I just wanted, this is rather not so much a question, but just a request. You could consider aiming your sights at stories aimed at younger people. If you think adult cinema is narrow, try spending some time with youth television. It's just painful. Boys do battles and go on a quest, girls do hair and gossip. And I would love to see a lot more interesting and just interesting stories
cette dame, c'est de cibler plus les jeunes.
I totally agree.
Surtout sur les maladies, évidemment,
Maybe
plus
one more?
les réseaux sociaux
Yeah,
maintenant.
that-
Ils sont vraiment stéréotypés.
Invisible disability earlier. My medical condition seems to have popped up conveniently whenever I finished a course. And the problem is because it's not a regular disability, no one really takes it seriously. Is there a way to still find opportunities, even when it comes to that, without being stuck in that position where no one considers me disabled because it's not regular?
It's an interesting question because often, like with this new funding model we have for artists with disability, filmmakers with disability, for us the definition of disability is social and barriers. So we require that the applicant or the person who identifying a disability demonstrate that their disability had prevented them from taking up opportunities or had shown demonstrable barriers to them wanting to move forward in life on a social and work level. But it is a grey area. Yeah.
Do you know what I'd say here is, I couldn't give you any personal advice right now, but what I think is, again, what I said at the beginning about the fact that we need to take disability out of diversity is because it's so complex and there's so much there to explore. And I think now that we're opening that box and we're starting to tell those stories, we can start exploring all the different shades and how actually most people out there will at some point in their life go through ill health or ill mental health, and they will understand what it may be like to be in a situation which is you're born with or you come into, because disability can be something that happens to you at any point in your life. And I think those stories need to be told from what it's like, from all those different points of view. There is so much, there's so much that we can be forging forward with a disability narrative right now. And I think we were talking a little bit earlier about how to compensate. I mean, I freaked out my producer last year when we were talking about doing a feature, and I was explaining what my disability was and how we needed that for insurance. It's something you don't think about. You have an invisible disability. They're going to need to know if you can do an 18-day shoot. And he said, well, you can't do an 18-day shoot, can you? So we can't do this on the budget we want to do. So how's it going to work? And I think that's the other side, which is when you as the artist are in ownership of what you can and can't do, and you ask for the help that you need without being ashamed of it, you change the way that that work happens. So not only are you changing the narrative, but you're changing the process. And I think that's the other side of it. Not only is it going to be good for the industry for these stories to be told in what they're seeing, but in how disabled people can be part of the crew, who can work at the same levels. People with children might be able to work differently as well and be part of those same systems. It's about thinking that the old system doesn't work for everybody. It's for a certain type of able-bodied person, and everything needs to change. We need to do that, but we need to do that by owning and saying what we need and what we don't.
Yeah, that was great. I think we have reached our time limit. If you would like to talk more, we will be here. You can talk to us personally. But thank you so much for sitting on the panel and sharing your experiences, and of course being here and sharing your film with us. We do have more screenings this afternoon at the Dandy and tomorrow. And thank you very much. Let's give